The fluorescent lights of the courtroom hummed a sterile counterpoint to the chaotic drumming in my chest. My hands clasped tightly in my lap were slick with sweat. Across the aisle, my brother Michael refused to meet my gaze. His lawyer, a stern woman, with a voice as sharp as her tailored suit, stood before the judge. "Your Honor." She began her words, a hammer blow to my already fractured heart. "My client Michael Miller is seeking damages from the defendant, Sarah Miller, for irreparable harm and medical complications directly resulting from a kidney transplant that, in his words, ruined his life." My breath hitched. Ruined his life. The words ricocheted around the room, echoing the silent scream trapped in my throat. I stared at Michael, searching for any flicker of the brother I knew, the one I'd shared secrets with, the one I'd literally given a part of myself to. But his face was a mask of cold indignation. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be real. Our childhood was a tapestry woven with laughter, whispered confessions under starlit skies, and the fierce, unyielding bond of siblings. Michael was my younger brother, 2 years my junior, and from the moment he arrived, tiny and squalling, I felt an innate need to protect him. He was a gentle soul, a little more sensitive than me, and I took my role as his older sister very seriously. I remember countless times on the playground, chasing off bullies twice his size, my small fists ready to defend him. If he scraped his knee, I was there with a Band-Aid and a comforting hug. If he struggled with homework, I'd patiently walk him through it until the concepts clicked. Our parents, bless their hearts, fostered an environment of love and mutual support. Michael, in turn, was a good son. He was respectful, tried his best in school, and always brought a quiet joy to our home. He wasn't boisterous or demanding, just a steady, reassuring presence. We spent hours building elaborate forts in the backyard, inventing fantastical worlds where we were heroes and villains, always with me as his loyal protector. He was my shadow, my confidant, my first and truest friend. The idea that this person, my little brother, would one day see me as his enemy, let alone blame me for his suffering, was utterly inconceivable back then. Life, as it often does, pulled us in different directions as we grew older. I pursued a career in nursing, a calling that aligned with my deep-seated desire to help others. Michael found his path in finance, a world far removed from my own. We didn't see each other every day, but our bond remained. Regular phone calls, holiday gatherings, and the occasional weekend visit kept our connection strong. We were still there for each other, even if the daily proximity was gone. Then came the call that would forever alter the course of our lives. It was my mother, her voice thin and reedy, laced with a fear I'd rarely heard. "Sarah," she choked out, "it's Michael. His kidneys. They're failing." The words hit me like a physical blow. Michael, my strong, healthy brother, facing something so devastating, my mind immediately leaped to solutions to what I could do. As a nurse, I understood the gravity of kidney failure, the grueling regimen of dialysis, the desperate wait for a donor. Without a moment's hesitation, without even a thought of what it might mean for me, I blurted out, "Mom, I'll get tested. I'll donate a kidney." It wasn't a decision born of careful deliberation or weighing pros and cons. It was an immediate, visceral, unconditional response. Michael was my brother. He needed me. And if I had a part of myself that could save him, then that part was already his. My parents tried to temper my enthusiasm, urging me to think it through, to consider the risks. But my resolve was unwavering. The tests, the interviews, the consultations, they were all just necessary steps on the path to getting Michael well again. I went through them with a singular focus, ignoring the subtle aches and pains that came with the pre-op preparations, pushing aside any fleeting moments of fear about the surgery itself. All that mattered was Michael's health, his future. I was going to give him a second chance at life. The surgery itself was a blur of bright lights, hushed voices, and the unsettling smell of antiseptic. I remember waking up in a haze of pain, my abdomen screaming in protest. It felt like I'd been cleaved in two, a raw, gaping wound where a vital organ once resided. The first few days were agonizing, Every cough, every laugh, every slight movement sent searing pain through my core. Getting out of bed felt like scaling a mountain, and even the simple act of breathing was a conscious effort. The physical recovery was immense, but the emotional toll was equally profound. There was a strange sense of emptiness, a phantom ache where my kidney had been. But intertwined with that discomfort was a profound sense of pride of purpose. I had done it. I had saved him. Michael's recovery was thankfully swifter than mine. He seemed to bounce back with remarkable speed, the color returning to his cheeks, a sparkle to his eyes that had been dulled by his illness. Seeing him strong and healthy, knowing I had played a part in that, was a powerful antidote to my own pain. It made every stitch, every ache, every sleepless night worthwhile. The financial strain was also significant. Even with insurance, there were countless co-pays, medications, and weeks of lost wages. I had to dip into my savings, cancel a long-planned vacation, and tighten my budget considerably. But none of that truly mattered. I was just grateful to have been able to help him. I visited him daily in the hospital, cheering him on, bringing him his favorite snacks, holding his hand as he drifted off to sleep. I pictured a future where we'd laugh about this, where he'd tease me about my scars, and we'd share an even deeper bond forged in this life-altering experience. I truly believed this act of sacrifice would bring us closer than ever. The turning point was subtle at first, a gradual shift that I initially dismissed as post-transplant stress. After Michael was discharged, and the initial wave of celebratory relief subsided, a coolness began to creep into his demeanor. Our daily calls dwindled, replaced by curt texts. When I visited, he was often distant, preoccupied, sometimes even irritable. I tried to understand. I reminded myself that major surgery and a lifetime of immunosuppressants were a lot to adjust to. I offered understanding patience and a listening ear. "How are you feeling, really?" I'd ask, trying to break through the new barrier between us. "Are you in pain? Are you struggling with the medications?" His responses were always vague, dismissive. "I'm fine," he'd mumble, or, "It's just a lot, Sarah. You wouldn't understand." But then the complaints started. Little at first, almost imperceptible. He'd complain about a persistent ache in his side, a feeling of fatigue, a sensitivity to certain foods. And he'd subtly, almost imperceptibly, tie these complaints back to the transplant. "I never felt this tired before." He'd lament, sighing dramatically. "Before all this, my heart would sink. Before all this, before I gave you a part of me to save your life." The comments grew bolder, more direct. He started blaming the transplant for everything. His difficulty concentrating at work, his dwindling social life, even a persistent headache. "My life was so much simpler before this," he'd say, his voice tinged with a bitter resentment. "I was better off before. Now I'm just broken." The accusations hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating me. Broken, he was alive. He was no longer tethered to a dialysis machine, no longer facing an uncertain future. He had been given a gift, a chance at a normal life, and he was acting as if it was a curse. I tried to reason with him, to remind him of the alternative of the life he almost lost. But it was like talking to a stranger. The brother I knew, the one who was grateful, who understood the magnitude of what had been done, seemed to have vanished, replaced by a bitter, unrecognizing version of himself. The light in his eyes, once so clear and bright, had been replaced by a brooding darkness. The day the envelope arrived, thick and official-looking, I knew instinctively that something was terribly wrong. My hands trembled as I tore it open, revealing the cold, stark language of a summons. Michael was suing me, my own brother, for gross negligence and intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming the kidney transplant had caused him irreparable medical complications, both physical and psychological. He blamed me for his ongoing pain, his alleged inability to work, his deteriorated quality of life. He sought millions in damages. I reread the papers, my mind struggling to comprehend the audacity, the cruelty of it all. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete fabrication, a malicious twisting of reality. The pain in my side, the scars that had only just begun to fade, the financial sacrifices. All of it was suddenly meaningless in the face of this monstrous accusation. It wasn't just my kidney he was trying to take. He was trying to take my peace, my sense of self, my very ability to trust. I called my parents, my voice shaking with a mixture of shock and disbelief. My mother wept openly, unable to reconcile the son she knew with the person who was doing this. My father, usually stoic, was speechless, his face etched with a profound sadness. Michael refused to speak to any of us. He had erected an impenetrable wall fueled by what I could only assume was a deep-seated resentment and a desperate need to externalize his own struggles. The legal process was a brutal, dehumanizing ordeal. Every aspect of my life was scrutinized, every medical record examined. His lawyers painted a picture of me as a reckless, incompetent donor, disregarding all the proper medical procedures, implying I had somehow forced him into this surgery. They presented doctored documents and cherry-picked medical opinions to support their outrageous claims. It was a vicious, calculated attack designed to dismantle my credibility and paint me as the villain. I felt stripped bare, exposed, and utterly alone. The person I had literally given a piece of myself to was now systematically dismantling my life. The courtroom drama was a surreal nightmare, a twisted play where I was forced to defend my own compassion. Michael sat across from me, a stony expression on his face, occasionally whispering to his lawyer. He looked nothing like the brother I remembered, the one who would confide in me, who would seek my comfort. This Michael was a stranger, a caricature of bitterness. When it was my turn to testify, my voice was steady, despite the tremor in my hands. I told the truth simply and plainly. I recounted the years of our close relationship, the immediate unconditional decision to donate the arduous recovery, and the unwavering hope I had for his future. I explained the rigorous medical screening I underwent, the consent forms Michael signed, the multiple consultations with doctors who had cleared him for the transplant. I presented the medical reports, the detailed logs of my own difficult recovery, the financial strain I endured. Michael's lawyer, relentless, tried to trip me up, to twist my words. She questioned my motives, suggested I was seeking attention, even implied I had somehow pressured him into the surgery. "Ms. Miller," she sneered, "isn't it true that you were eager to be seen as a hero?" A fire ignited within me, a spark of indignation that finally cut through the fog of pain. "No," I said, my voice rising clear and strong. "It's true that I loved my brother, and I still do. And I would do it again despite all of this, because that's what family does." The words hung in the air, a raw, honest declaration. I looked directly at Michael, then daring him to meet my gaze. He flinched, his eyes darting away. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I watched as my lawyer systematically dismantled their flimsy case. We brought in expert medical witnesses who refuted every one of their claims, confirming that Michael's post-transplant complications were either normal adjustments or unrelated issues that he was choosing to attribute to the surgery. We presented evidence of Michael's declining mental health and his history of blaming others for his problems. We showed the court the consistent pattern of his resentment after the surgery, his desire to escape responsibility for his own choices. The climax came when my lawyer played a recording of a voicemail Michael had left me a few months before the lawsuit. In it, his voice slurred and angry accused me of ruining his life because he couldn't party like he used to. It was a raw, unedited glimpse into his true motivations, a pathetic attempt to shift the blame for his own struggles with alcohol and poor lifestyle choices onto the very person who had saved him. The courtroom gasped. Michael's face went pale. The manipulation was exposed. The lies shattered. The judge, after careful deliberation, dismissed the case with prejudice. Michael's lawsuit was not only rejected, but deemed frivolous, a baseless attempt to exploit a compassionate act. The courtroom felt silent for a long moment, and then a quiet murmur of relief rippled through the spectators. I had faced the darkness, stared it down, and reclaimed my story. Oh, walking out of that courtroom, the harsh sunlight felt like a cleansing balm on my skin. The heavy weight I had carried for months, years, even finally lifted. But the victory, though profound, was bittersweet. I had won the legal battle, but the war for my relationship with Michael was irrevocably lost. The trust was shattered beyond repair, the love poisoned by his resentment and betrayal. The emotional aftermath was a complex tapestry of relief, grief, and a surprising sense of liberation. I had to mourn the brother I thought I had, the relationship I had cherished. It was a painful process, acknowledging that the person I had sacrificed so much for was capable of such a devastating act of cruelty. But with that grief came a fierce determination to heal. I started therapy, processing the trauma, the betrayal, and the profound sense of injustice. I learned to set firm boundaries, not just with Michael, but with others in my life, who might inadvertently drain my emotional resources. I learned to prioritize my own well-being, to recognize that my compassion, while a strength, also needed to be protected. I also found an unexpected purpose in sharing my story. Initially, it was just with close friends, then, with support groups for organ donors. The raw vulnerability of my experience resonated with others who had faced similar betrayals, whether in family relationships or other acts of kindness. I began speaking at events, sharing my journey of resilience, of reclaiming my narrative, of finding strength in the face of profound hurt. I wanted people to know that acts of generosity, while beautiful, don't always guarantee gratitude. I wanted them to understand that true strength lies not just in giving, but in knowing when to protect yourself, when to walk away from toxicity, and when to heal. My scar, once a reminder of the pain and betrayal, has become a symbol of my strength. It's a testament to the selfless act I performed, a reminder of the profound capacity for both love and cruelty that exists in the human heart. And it's a constant, tangible proof of my resilience. My journey has been dark, heartbreaking, and at times utterly devastating. But through it all, I have emerged not broken, but stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live a life filled with authentic connection, self-love, and unwavering hope. My story isn't just about a kidney and a lawsuit. It's about forgiveness, not of Michael, but of myself, for holding on to a dream that no longer existed. It's about understanding that while I couldn't control his actions, I could control my reaction. And in that control, I found my power.